Today I'd like to talk about moving on from promiscuity. So I did a video around the value of monogamy, and I'll link that or put it up or something. Specifically, promiscuous behavior for men is what I'd like to talk about. That's what I'm familiar with for the most part. Um, there's layers to it. So in the first layer, there is um, just prioritizing time and energy. And in the second layer, there is the perception of women. And the third layer is what, fundamentally, what is all of this covering up? So we'll start with the first layer. Um, this is the easiest thing to get a hold on is, well, what's the best use of my time? Do I feel enriched by being with more women? Would I and are there returns on it? The difference between um, buying a house and buying a car. One appreciates and one doesn't. If you spend your time chasing meaningless sex, um, a year now, 5 years from now, what do you have to show for that? Versus starting a business or playing an instrument or actually cultivating a meaningful relationship with someone, that you see a future. So unfortunately, um, this this is a little bit complicated because in the concept of value added to your life, our society actually does promote promiscuous behavior. So it does give the false perception of value added, which is not true, but it can be a little bit difficult to wade through that with all the the way TV is done and just social pressure to go out and get laid. So while there is that little caveat, for the most part, the first step I think is just getting over this. Well, in a practical sense, if I want my life to improve, I have to start taking this finite amount of energy that I have every day and put it into things that are going to appreciate in value. So so there's that. Now the second thing is the perception of women, which is also a very massively culturally influenced issue. Women are highly objectified by men and by themselves, and so the idea of collecting women comes out of that. If you if you see like you have a bunch of money, for example, and you like cars, well, car is an object. You collect a bunch. There's nothing wrong with that. If you have the means and it brings you joy, go ahead. Or you play guitar, collect guitars, or whatever. If it brings you joy and it's within your means, go ahead. However, women are not objects, and the idea of collecting women is ignorant. I mean, I have a rant about ignorance somewhere else, but um, it's just it's just ignorant and inappropriate and immature. It sounds judgmental, but it's like if if anyone really understood the consequence of this kind of behavior, they wouldn't do it. You know, um, Even the show like Californication, where the guy comes off, he's like a sex addict, but he comes off as such a nice guy, is totally bullshit. It's so ridiculously ignorant because while he comes off in these like brief moments of interaction with women to be such a nice and caring and considerate guy, the truth is that every time he sleeps with these women, any one of them all he's doing is reinforcing whatever underlying trauma is there for them, and he's taking advantage of them. So, um, so even in our television, there's this, um, there's all this information or this story about how you can be benevolently womanizing, and it's ridiculous. So, um, so a big part of overcoming this kind of behavior is to correct and realign perception of women to the truth, which is that they're divine beings. And this doesn't, and it's not exclusive to women. I'm saying that for myself as a heterosexual man, but everybody is a divine being. Everybody. And it doesn't, however you orientate, if you're a man or a woman, and then whichever orientation you are, doesn't matter. Everybody deserves to be treated as the truth of who they are. So the idea of collecting, using, manipulating for your personal interest, gain, or entertainment is inappropriate. So not to put a guilt spin on it, but just to say, look, try to see the value of someone who the value that someone really is. You know how much they really are, what's really going on underneath all of it, because there's so much there, and the more you look, the more difficult it will be to objectify. Okay, so the third thing, and this is when it gets really to the crux of it, and this is the hardest part. All the other layers are really just protection mechanisms. At the very bottom of it is just like drug addiction or alcohol or working out or um, uh, overworking, like at your job, whatever it might be. At the very bottom of it is that there is a trauma that you are avoiding, and the more you can engage in any behavior that will stimulate you enough, you can avoid that trauma. So, with that in mind, this is where the real work comes to get out from underneath this kind of behavior. And um, and for me, it was it was related to control issues around my relationship with my mother, and I'll link that as well. Something that was revealed as an insight during a fast. I started seeing um, some control stuff come up, but it could be control. It could be a lack of self worth or love. Could be a lot of things. I mean, I have no idea, but if you are treating people in an unloving way, I can pretty much guarantee you that there is something unwell, there's something unsettled or incomplete there or unprocessed. There's something in you that's provoking the behavior, and that's really to be looked at. And until it is looked at and processed, um, you can't really expect that the behavior will dissolve, because through willpower you can control it, but that's not really where you want to be. That's not in a place of rest. Um, you want to go into it and work it out from the bottom. Um, Now, just kind of as a side note, I'm not saying that having multiple partners through a lifetime is bad. I'm not trying to make that judgment. What I'm trying to address, which was my case, which seems to come up for a lot of guys, is that we have engaged in behaviors that we recognize is not what we want, and yet we still do them. So there was a period of time where I really wanted to be in a loving, committed, monogamous relationship and to go deep into that space. And yet, I kept falling back into these old behaviors. So, um, if you want to be single and you are forthcoming with where you're at, with who you're talking to, by all means. But, you have to be forthcoming because it would be a really shitty thing to tell somebody or to mislead someone that you actually want to see something come out of your interaction when really you don't. But if you're honest and straightforward, then whatever. Have a bunch of partners. If you're all consenting adults, whatever. But have fun. Um, but again, so this is not about that. It's about being in a place where you've kind of had your fun, you're ready to kind of, I hate to say this, but grow up and have a real relationship, but there's something stuck. And once you get to the bottom of it, it's something unresolved. It's some kind of unresolved trauma, and um, and to be clear, trauma doesn't necessarily mean a traumatic event specifically. It can be a lot of little traumas, and that's what I mean by a lack of self-worth. So being constantly reminded by a parent or a friend or society at large that you're not good enough, or that you're not supported or loved. So um, this can be really painful to look into for yourself. Um, I would like to make myself available if you want to reach out to me and talk about whatever you're going through. I'm happy to do that. So, thank you.